Hello.
Welcome back to the Space Gulag, otherwise known as PPSW, your favorite hangout place, and today we're back with another Star Wars story. Today we're going to discover what would have happened had Anakin Skywalker been born with a sister. Would the Skywalker siblings be able to save the universe, or would they be the downfall of it? Before we begin this video, special thanks to our patrons, voice actors, and everyone else a part of the Pente Patrol team. If you want a chance to win in our next giveaway, watch to the end of the video. I will tell you how to win, and I will also tell you that I will give away the winner during a video, not in the comment section. That's not me. Our story begins inside of the Jedi Temple. Grandmaster Yoda sits silently inside of his room. The air is still and his mind is focused. The galaxy was at peace. It had been at peace for relatively most of Yoda's life. He had no reason to fear war or the Sith, considering they were almost entirely absent for the majority of a millennia. Yoda felt the Force surround him. He was as true as any master in the Order when it came to the Jedi Code, and their understanding of the Force itself. Yoda had a day full of instruction, as per normal for the Grand Master of the Order, and he was finally settling down. Yoda meditated a lot, and he was beginning his final meditation of the day. The sun across Coruscant became hidden behind the figures of the tall skyscrapers that towered through Coruscant's skyline. Yoda opened his eyes as he looked out. Everything was right with the galaxy, and with the world he was currently resided on. There was always going to be trouble anywhere, but the majority of the people in the galaxy had freedom, and they had happiness. Yoda rejoiced in what the people of the galaxy had to enjoy. He settled himself down into a meditative state as he truly let the Force run throughout him. Yoda peacefully entered a vision of which he saw rivers of lava towers over him, and from the sky there were two individuals walking. They were Skywalkers of some sort. It was weird how they could just walk like the way they were walking. Yoda then saw the ground rupture, and into it billions upon trillions of people fell in, killed off by these powerful beings. Yoda looked into their piercing yellow eyes, as it was apparent that these were the most powerful beings Yoda had ever seen. Their raw potential was incredible. Yoda then watched as they walked across lava and into the Jedi Temple, only raising a hand as the man and woman brought down the beloved Tower of Peace on Coruscant. Yoda then watched as the two of them turned their attention towards him, and only a stare could polarize Master Yoda as he felt helpless in their gaze. Yoda then awoke from the Force as he felt the location of the Outer Rim call to him, and sand formed across his tiny green feet. Yoda then looked down to his feet to see the sand, and he shook it off. As he looked around the room to only see darkness out the window, and the glimmer of the cityscape, Yoda pondered for a moment as he got to his feet. Across that same city, another very powerful being had the same vision. Though his vision didn't have the Jedi crumbling, rather he saw himself becoming a victim of what he had created. Darth Plagueis the Wise was the Dark Lord of the Sith, extremely intelligent and impressively powerful. He looked around his room as he looked at the tables in front of him. It had almost been 9 months since he tried creating a life, and while it seemed as if it was a failure, maybe he was mistaken. This vision had jarred him from his meditative state. It seemed to be an indication that he had been successful in creating such a life, and while he must have been successful, he didn't know where this life could have been born. Plagueis looked forward, and as a shadow breeze passed through his room, a bit of sand debris landed across his aching black robes. Plagueis decided he would chase the Lothal cat in this situation and follow the Force back into the vision. Plagueis used his insight as he closed his eyes and transitioned himself into the living Force itself. Plagueis wasn't exactly the typical power-hungry Sith Lord. Okay, maybe he was power-hungry, but he didn't let it control his actions. Plagueis was very focused on the Force, and his power in the Force. He didn't let his lust for power cloud his vision or his focus. Plagueis was a bit brighter of a Sith Lord, though he had one continuous sin. He taught his apprentice everything he learned about the dark side. One would assume that Plagueis, after killing his own master, would have been smart enough to assume that Lord Sidious would try and do the same thing to him. Maybe Plagueis wanted to share this information so that the Sith could become more eternal, more powerful, but other than that, it wasn't really all that certain why he would do it. Plagueis was transported back to the rivers of lava as he watched the man and woman stand side by side. Their bond with one another made them seem unstoppable. Plagueis then realized that he had accidentally created twins within the Force, two beings with incredible raw strength and raw potential. They both awoke the Force to something not even the Force knew how to handle. These twins were created because Sidious and Plagueis were trying to mess with the Force. These beings were brought into existence for the sole purpose of exposing the Sith and destroying them. Plagueis went further into the vision, trying to find as much information as he could regarding these two beings, though there was not enough for the Sith Lord to discover. Plagueis would open his eyes as he stepped forward. He got to one of the tables in his room and he began looking through the papers. He had documents, notes, and scientific advancements scoured across the room. He just needed to find where the right ones were. Plagueis made notes about everything, and especially on the nights when he tried to create life. He focused especially hard on creating life. It was a dream after all. The Sith could build an army greater than what the Sith Empire had at its peak, and every single member could be trained from birth in the ways of the dark side, so that when it was time to come, they would eventually be able to overthrow anyone who stood in their way. A completely loyal army of Sith warriors. Though there was one issue with this, not even Plagueis knew how to control it, or how the Force interpreted creating life. And there was also a bigger issue. The two beings, just born, were powerful enough in the Force to create a surge just from being brought into the galaxy. This surge was felt across every star system, by all the most powerful Force users. Mother Talzin and Old Doc on Dathomir felt it, and their level of concern was certainly acknowledgeable. As for the Barrando sages, they weren't overly thrilled with this surge in the Force. The Jedi High Council was converging with one another, as they all respectively felt it. Only a few others, such as Yaddle, Plo Koon, and Sifo-Dyas, had the vision that Yoda had, though. The Jedi High Council all agreed that they needed to get out immediately and find these beings. The Council didn't know if they were adults or children, but they did know they had to be found before they wiped out the entire galaxy. Their power would certainly be able to take on any individual within the Council, let alone wiping out their entire order in one swift strike. Yoda met with the High Council immediately, addressing his very obvious and understandable concerns. He told the Jedi that he assumed that these beings were born in the Outer Rim, and that they had come from a sand planet. This was a very open debate. It could be any planet with some water and beachfronts, or it could just be any world that was full of sand. Yoda suggested that if the Jedi were to find this, each Master on the Council would be assigned another Jedi Master, and go out and find these beings of the Force. The Council members all knew what these beings felt like. Considering their essence was literally put into their laps, they would be able to sense them when these powerful beings were present. The Jedi Council was dispersed immediately afterwards. Every Council member got on the move as quickly as they could. As for Yoda, he was on the move as well. For the Sith, Plagueis was searching through documents to get an idea of where these beings were brought to. It was very possible he had notes of where they would have been born. Plagueis specifically chose planets away from the core so that if these powerful beings were born, the Jedi wouldn't have been able to recognize this essence being brought into the galaxy. But considering that he felt it all the way out on Coruscant, it was entirely likely that the Jedi felt it too. But Plagueis was a man of science, and of the Force, and he composed a theory, suggesting that if he felt it, it was because the children were created by him. They were constructed into the Force by his will, so by that fact they should be his very will. Also, there was also another fact. Palpatine didn't feel the birth of these beings. Palpatine was still on Coruscant, but he had no clue that these beings were born, nor did he feel their presence, which was really oddly peculiar because Palpatine was very strong within the Force. Plagueis would sift through all these notes that he had on his desk and all the documents as he eventually found the right ones for almost 9 months prior. The document stated that the essence was sent to Tatooine. If there was a powerful enough surge in the future, Plagueis would assume it would be from Tatooine. So with that, he sent his apprentice, Darth Sidious, to Tatooine to locate the children and bring them to him. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be easier than finding the children on Coruscant. There were always 3 main cities on Tatooine, and they weren't all that massive. It should have been relatively easy for Palpatine to locate the children. Another reason for Palpatine to have no issue finding them was that Tatooine was very rarely had Force adepts on it, and also Plagueis needed to dig through his documents in case the children weren't in fact born on Tatooine. Out across the galaxy, Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi went to the planet of Ryloth to try and locate the beings. Yarael Poof and his other Jedi friend went to the planet of Tatooine. Yaddle and one of her former Padawans would travel to Knighthood. 3 Jedi would end up landing on Tatooine. Sifo-Dyas traveled alone and reconvened with Master Windu and his good friend Master Dooku. The 3 were very good friends with one another, and to see all of them travel to Tatooine with one another still made them very, very happy. Though because there were 3 major cities, they would all split up. Sifo-Dyas would head to the capital of Tatooine, Mos Espa, while Windu would travel to a city not too far away at Mos Eisley. Dooku, on the other hand, would hit the plethora of smaller cities in between. With the Jedi spread out on the hunt, this was going to be very possible that the Jedi would find these beings first, though they didn't know they were in a competition to find them first. Part of the fear of discovering such powerful Force users was that others would yearn for it. In the case of these, they could possibly be Sith. That's part of the reason the Council was sent in duos, because there were always two Sith, a master and an apprentice, and if these visions of these two were very true, then they could very much so be a master and apprentice duo. The Jedi would need one another to fend off these powerful beings. Luckily for the Jedi, this wasn't at all the case, but they still moved out very quickly. At the same time, the Jedi went off across Tatooine. Sidious landed on the Dust Bowl. He landed in the capital city because it was one of the very few places with a spaceport. The Jedi, on the other hand, didn't land in a spaceport, so that the three of them could collectively regroup in the middle. As for Sidious, he was a one-man party. He was just simply searching for the children. Once he landed on the planet, the Force could be felt everywhere. The planet was more alive than ever before. These two children were certainly powerful beings in the galaxy, and it wasn't even close to comparison. Sidious walked through the streets, breaking into an incredible sweat with his black robes covering his body. They didn't shield him from the sun, they only made him hotter. This Sith was very used to the cool, composed weather of Naboo and Coruscant. Tatooine was certainly not that. Palpatine sauntered around as he searched for these children of the Force. At the same time, Sifo-Dyas had ventured into the capital city of Tatooine. The city was sprawling with life, and it was a most very extraordinary place for the Jedi to be. Though Sifo-Dyas recognized that these beings were clearly in Mos Espa. He contacted his other two friends and told them that the beings were here. Dooku and Windu would make their way over to Mos Espa. The twin sons of Tatooine beat down on every living soul that lived here. It explained why the Tuskens were so violent. Who wouldn't turn violent if all they knew were two suns and hundreds of degrees worth of smoldering heat? It could turn a Jedi violent. Sifo-Dyas wiped his brow as he looked around, searching in the food stands, cantinas, and just about any other street vendor. He wasn't able to find anything, but with 3 Jedi inside the city, their chances of finding these beings were even more likely to happen sooner. Sifo-Dyas knew he just wanted to find them and get off of this rock. It was way too hot here. He'd rather be in the council chambers, talking about literally anything other than being here. Inside of a small house, a mother held her 2 children. She was shocked by what had happened. How could she give birth to 2 children without ever meeting a father? There was no father, and it was evident from Shmi's experience in the last 9 months. But she held her children. She had twins, a boy and a girl. The first one born was a girl. Her name was Kendali Skywalker. The younger one was Anakin Skywalker. These 2 children were beautiful, but Shmi had a lot on her mind. She was a slave on Tatooine. There was very little she could do for these children to give them a good and healthy life. She didn't want them to grow up being slaves like her. She wanted them to have a good life, and that was something she just couldn't offer them herself. Shmi held her children when a knocking came at the door. Shmi stood to her feet as she put the children down into their cribs. Shmi then made her way over to the door and opened it. It was a taller man with longer hair. He looked to be a Jedi, but Shmi wasn't sure. She'd never seen one in person before. The man introduced himself to her. He said his name was Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas. He wanted to know if Shmi was Force sensitive by any chance. Shmi shook her head. She didn't really know what that was about, or what it meant. Sifo-Dyas knew that she was Force sensitive. Every being in the galaxy was, after all, but when Sifo-Dyas asked the question, he meant the ability to actively wield the Force. There was a certain level of requirement for one to become a Jedi after all, and Shmi was certainly not that. She also wasn't one of those beings from the vision. Sifo-Dyas asked if Shmi had anyone else living in the house. Shmi asked why he would ask. Sifo-Dyas told her that there were 2 beings that had alerted the Jedi Council by their presence. They were extremely powerful, and it was as if they appeared out of thin air. Shmi grabbed the Jedi's master's hand and pulled him into the house. She told him that she had become pregnant with twins, but she never interacted with a man to conceive these children. Sifo-Dyas was very confused by this as he followed her into the next room. She told the Jedi that maybe these children were sensitive forcers or whatever it was that Sifo had mentioned a moment earlier. Sifo-Dyas asked if he could use a small device on the children to read their midichlorian count. Shmi was confused, but She shrugged and allowed the Jedi Master to do his thing. Sifo-Dyas walked over and kneeled down. It was obvious they were strong within the Force, even if that weren't what they felt through the Force. Sifo-Dyas pulled out a small device and tapped it into the sister as he waited for results to pop up. Sifo-Dyas turned around and asked Shmi what their names were. She told him that the girl was Kendali and the boy was Anakin. Sifo-Dyas took note of the fact that Shmi didn't address them as if they were her own children. Sifo-Dyas wasn't sure why it was that she couldn't or wouldn't address them as son or daughter, but he didn't ask. He just allowed her to keep talking so he could get a better idea of what Shmi would say if these children were in fact Force sensitive, the ones from the vision, that is. Outside, a sandstorm began to pick up. Windu, Dooku, and Palpatine, who were all walking around the city, couldn't figure out why the citizens were running for cover. It was obvious the wind had picked up, but it was nothing. The winds on Coruscant were titanic in strength and size. Wind that cut through skyscrapers could knock a star cruiser off course. It's part of the reason why Coruscant's Flight Academy had one of the best commercial pilots in all the galaxy, because they constantly had to take off and land with massive currents of wind blowing their ships off course. Regardless, Windu searched for his friend as they both lost contact with Master Sifo-Dyas. The Sith Lord continued to walk through the streets, searching through every alleyway trying to find the children. He would find a set of apartments, and he felt the presence grow stronger than ever as the winds picked up and his visibility decreased. Palpatine then went from door to door, trying to find the right home that these children could be in. Sifo-Dyas continued talking with Shmi for the time being, getting an understanding of her and what her life was like. Shmi told Sifo-Dyas that she was considering taking the children to an adoption agency. Sifo-Dyas was confused and asked why she would do such a thing. Shmi told him that she couldn't afford to take care of 2 children. She was a slave after all, and Watto, her slave owner, was not kind to her by any means. He wouldn't let her care for the children she had. They would all become slaves for him someday. Sifo-Dyas thought it repugnant that this could just exist anywhere in the galaxy, especially because the Republic sought to outlaw slavery from the same galaxy. It seemed not every politician kept their promises, though. Regardless, the door was knocked on. Shmi looked puzzled, as she told Sifo-Dyas that it was probably a passerby looking for residence. There was a sandstorm on the way anyways. Sifo-Dyas nodded his head as he waited for the result to come in regarding the girl. On another device, he was awaiting results for the boy. It would be quicker than doing both tests on the same device. As Sifo-Dyas turned around, he heard a lower, deeper, and darker voice speak. The words were elegant, and the accent was of an upper-class Naboo individual. Sifo-Dyas turned around when he heard a voice say something about a Force user, or children of the Force. Sifo-Dyas knew it wasn't a Jedi, and then he saw the lights flicker on. The midichlorian count of the children was astronomical. The counts of both children were higher than any Jedi on record, easily passing by Plo Koon, Mace Windu, and even Master Yoda. Though there was an issue. There was a Force user here, and it wasn't a Jedi. Sifo-Dyas tapped in his homing device beacon and notified the other 2 Jedi of his location. Sifo-Dyas hadn't done it before because he was going to be playful with the other Jedi about finding the children, and he also didn't want to mislead them in any case that these were not the beings in the vision. The second the beeper went off, Sifo-Dyas heard a lightsaber ignite as the woman at the door cried out. Sifo-Dyas turned around the corner as he looked at a younger man with reddish-grayish hair, as he looked at the Jedi with his blade sticking through Shmi's chest, as her lifeless expression died and she rolled off the lightsaber onto the ground. In the city streets, visibility was very low, but the 2 Jedi saw the homing beacon and swiftly made their way towards the location. Sifo-Dyas, on the other hand, looked into the piercing yellow eyes of the first Sith seen by a Jedi in millennia. Sifo-Dyas spoke up as his hand hovered over his lightsaber. Sidious growled as he listened to Dyas ask where the Sith had been. Sidious was a very inexperienced Sith as he spoke up, telling the Jedi that they had been hiding, deceiving, waiting for the proper moment to strike. Sifo-Dyas took in all this information as he asked what the Sith were doing here. Sidious told Sifo-Dyas that he was doing the same thing the Jedi were doing, looking for these beings of the Force. Sifo-Dyas was curious as to what the answer meant, but he didn't have time. He ignited his lightsaber as Sidious lunged across the room, using a Sith howl. Sifo-Dyas and Sidious interlocked their blades. The Jedi High Council member played with his food as he pushed Sidious back. Sifo-Dyas knew one thing: the storm outside was going to give him good cover if he used it effectively. The Jedi Master was more concerned with getting the children back to the Jedi Council than killing the Sith Lord. Sifo-Dyas moved around as he used his lightsaber to block and parry every single one of Sidious' strikes. Sifo-Dyas was brilliant with his combat against the overly aggressive opponent. The sounds of lightsabers echoed through the streets, dimmed out by the overly loud sound of the howling wind. Sifo-Dyas pushed his blade against Sidious as he kicked the Sith Lord from under his feet, and then used the Force to throw Sidious through the wall into the next home. Sidious yelled out as he crashed through the wall. Sifo-Dyas grinned and then sheathed his lightsaber as he went to pick up the two beeping devices and then grab the children. Sifo-Dyas ran forward and then slid to the ground as a lightsaber flew over his head, cutting just a single hair off of his head. Sifo-Dyas jumped up as he ran out the door into the sand. He covered the children's faces as he ran quickly towards where he remembered coming from. Dooku and Windu noticed the homing device was moving rapidly. It could only mean that Sifo-Dyas got himself into some trouble again. Luckily for Dooku, Sifo-Dyas was running directly towards him. Dooku ignited his lightsaber to be a waypoint for Sifo-Dyas to get to. When Sifo-Dyas got to the blue lightsaber of his good friend, Dooku, he told the Jedi Master that there was a Sith Lord here. He was here after the children as well. Dooku paused, and then he saw a red glimmering towards him. Sifo-Dyas ducked, and Dooku blocked the lightsaber throw. Dooku told his friend to get the children out of here. He would handle the Sith Lord. Sidious caught the lightsaber as he swung viciously towards Dooku. The sounds of lightsabers in the street were much more audible, as Windu, who was just around the corner, turned his walk into a run. He knew that someone was in trouble. It was very uncommon to hear lightsaber duels in a time of no Sith. Dooku and Sidious got into a heated exchange in the middle of a sandstorm. It was incredible. The light show from the middle of the sand blowing everywhere. Sifo-Dyas continued running as an amethyst blade ignited behind him, and Sidious engaged the two Jedi. Sifo-Dyas kept running as he made sure both children were okay in his arms. The lightsaber duel was audible the further and further he got. It meant that Sidious was still pushing the advance, trying to get his way out to the children. It seemed as if they were very important to him. Sifo-Dyas made sure to get them back inside the ship, and then come back out of the ship to see the weather on the horizon clearing. Sidious, Dooku, and Windu were still fighting. Sidious was avoiding as much combat as he could. He was trying to get the children. Sifo-Dyas stood at the edge of the ship as he waited to see what would happen next. He didn't want to expose the entrance of the ship to the Sith Lord. Dooku pushed back. The sightline was very visible now, as the three made their way from combat under the sandstorm. Three blades danced in the suns as Sifo-Dyas got fidgety. He feared for his friends' lives, but he knew he couldn't just abandon the children. He watched as Dooku shoved his blade forward. Sidious deflected the blade as the Master of the Order kicked into Sidious's knee, and the Sith fell back as he stumbled around. Sidious aimed his blade forward as he darted forward towards Windu. Dooku blocked the assault as he moved back into a defensive position. Windu, on the other hand, shoved himself forward as he pushed his advantage on Sidious. The Dark Lord was getting tired. This was a fearsome duel for him. He had to challenge the likes of some of the Order's best duelists. Sidious found some large rocks as he leaped off of them, jumping around in his aggressive stance, though his knee was buckling each step he took on it. Windu and Dooku got side by side as they blocked a wave of lightning from the Sith Lord. Dooku faked a move forward, and then Windu committed as he struck at Sidious. The Dark Lord was thrown off by the fake and fell for it. Windu jabbed his blade into Sidious's ribs as he fell to his knees. Dooku then swung violently forward as he cut into the chest of the Dark Lord. Sidious fell back as he coughed violently. Windu then kicked the Crimson Blade away from the Dark Lord, as Sifo-Dyas pulled it to him with the Force. Windu and Dooku tried to interrogate the dying Sith. Sidious had nothing to say, as they tried to get him to speak about the Sith and their return. Instead of speaking, Sidious used the Force to snap his own neck as he died in the desert beneath the feet of two Jedi. Windu and Dooku looked at one another as they shook their heads and turned their attention to Sifo-Dyas, who was standing behind them, waiting for them to come back. The three boarded their respective vessels and made their long trip back to Coruscant. On the way back, they informed the Jedi Council about their discovering of the Sith and their finding of the twins on Tatooine. These two siblings were incredible. The midichlorian count was higher than Master Yoda. The Jedi would want to ask questions, but those questions would have to wait until the Council reconvened in the Council chambers. It would make sense to cover everything while the Council was in a physical session. The main point is that these beings had been recovered and were en route to Coruscant, and the fact that the Sith had returned from being dead for millennia, the Jedi would have to make a move back to Coruscant swiftly, as Plagueis would feel the death of his apprentice early on. This was obviously a great disappointment for him, but there was always a backup plan. Plagueis knew about the Sith assassin Maul, and would complete his training and turn him into his newest pupil, for now. Sure, it was a lesson to Plagueis that teaching your student everything didn't make them better, but it would also enforce him to do everything himself. Obviously, Plagueis too would have struggled with fighting 3 Jedi Masters, but there were opportunities he would seize that Palpatine obviously did not, leading him to losing the children and allowing the Jedi to get their grubby hands and code on the most powerful beings in the galaxy. For the Jedi, they would reconvene inside the Jedi Temple, where they would begin to discuss what had been discovered on Tatooine. The Sith were back, and that much was very apparent. Though Sifo-Dyas, Dooku, and Windu couldn't decide if it were the Master or the apprentice that they had killed. While the Sith had been gone for millennia, the Jedi did know about the rule of 2. How could there be only a Master and an apprentice? Though they had one more pressing matter. The Sith would be dealt with, but it was a fact of the prophecy. There was an old Jedi legend that one being powerful enough to take on the galaxy, him or herself, would rise within the Jedi Order and bring balance to the galaxy. The issue is that there were 2 of them, a brother and a sister. The Jedi didn't know if this prophecy was talking about another being, or if the Jedi had accidentally overwritten their own prophecy. The idea that they had 2 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy ever was a bit unnerving. The Jedi were certainly cautious about this development they stumbled upon. If they couldn't maintain these children, then it could mean the end of everything. Though luckily for the Council, these children were only a mere few days old, and while it wasn't customary for children to be brought into the Order this early in their lives, the Jedi had no other choice, and the Jedi were prepared for everything in this extreme situation. Gallia and Anakin would be cared for a couple of years, but the question for the Council to decide now was who would train these 2 children. They were incredible beings, and there was just no way that any Jedi on the Council could train one or the other, let alone assigning 2 Jedi to train or teach either of them. Plo Koon quietly spoke up from the debate and suggested to the Council that the Council itself train the twins. The Council looked at Plo Koon as if he had just ripped his mask off to stop himself from breathing. The silence was then ended as a discussion began again. It hadn't been done in centuries. It was extremely uncommon for a Jedi to be trained by more than one master, and while it didn't go against the code, the Jedi would need to all agree on how the children were going to be trained. Because if a Jedi messed up, this could be catastrophic for the Order. The Jedi were very wary. But then from the other side of Master Yoda, the psychotic Ki-Adi-Mundi concurred with what Plo Koon had to say. He believed that the Council should be responsible for training the twins. Yaddle nodded her head in agreement. Part of Sifo-Dyas was upset by this. He formed an emotional bond with the children, probably because he was the only other person other than the children's mother to hold them and take care of them. Sifo-Dyas quieted himself down. He knew it was a selfish motive to try and train the children, or at least one of them, single-handedly. Master Oppo Rancisis broke the silence as he scratched his beard, asking what the Council would do in terms of teaching these children. How would the Council go about making sure they were treated like children correctly and giving them the necessary training they required from their Jedi Masters? Yoda spoke up. He suggested that each Jedi Master, inside of the Council, use their best teaching method that they had adopted from training others with the children. With the Force and with a lightsaber, it would allow the children to learn from the best Force users and lightsaber users the Order had to offer, while allowing the children to grow the most that they could. The Council thought this was a good idea. It allowed for the children to choose what path they thought would best serve them, but it would take them time. The next question was how long each teacher would have with them. Since there were 13 members, the Jedi Council, it would equate to 13 years of training. Ki-Adi-Mundi asked about their Padawan trials. Mace nodded his head as he looked around to see if anyone had anything to say. Mace then suggested that by the time these children were 15, the likelihood of them being knight material was more than likely. It just depended on how well they were trained and who trained them first. The Jedi would have to decide the order in which they would train the children. Yarael Poof, in the corner of the room, spoke up and asked how each master could bring more Jedi Masters with them, or if they could, for their teachings. Yoda looked around, and he saw no issue with this. If the twins were to succeed, the best, then the Council should treat them as if they were the best. But the Council couldn't do anything in the ways of training the children yet. It wasn't the right time for the children to be trained. They were only a few days old, and it would take at least 3 years until they could really begin to start training the children in the ways of the Force, and allow their little minds to expand into what they could truly achieve. Yoda suggested that every master take the next 3 years to go to Jocasta Nu and plan out their lessons. If each council member had a year to teach their student, then it would make sense if their lessons were all planned in coalition with one another, so that when the twins got the best experience out of everything in their training. It would be important that the Jedi used the order they assigned to each other to plan out their lessons, assuming how fast the children would progress as well. But being that every master in the High Council was on the council for a reason, it made perfect sense for them to train the children together. For the next 3 years, Kandali and Anakin would be monitored by the Jedi Council members, and they would periodically check in on them to see how they were doing. These children did show very early signs of the ability to use the Force, but for the most part they were just being children. They were sleeping, eating, and kinda just existing. They couldn't do much until Kandali and Anakin could start walking. That's where the fun began, for the Watchers. The Jedi who kept a close eye on all the youngest members of the Order. The Jedi Masters were kind of like babysitters. They took care of the children that weren't old enough to begin their training, though they didn't like being called babysitters, so they were called Watchers. Kandali and Anakin were separated from other children. It wasn't to isolate them, it was just to keep them in a safe space away from the others. Kandali and Anakin were very special, and the Council all recognized it, but the Council had to stick to the task that they assigned themselves to. They were to be the teachers of these children, and their lesson plans would become very to the point. Almost every single day of every single year would be kept under a tight schedule. Of course, the teachers who had the students when they were younger wouldn't be as strict, but they would make sure that these two children got the most from their learning. Jocasta Nu also became very invested in the training of Skywalker twins. Both Kandali and Anakin would become incredible projects. There was so much information in the archives that Jocasta suggested each master use. Of course, the more in-depth lessons and abilities being saved for when Kandali and Anakin were old enough to use them. After the 3 years, the first master up was the Grand Master himself, Master Yoda. He didn't get to be first because he was Grand Master, he got to be first because he was the Jedi Master responsible for training sessions and entire classes of younglings. Yoda would take Kandali and Anakin to a planet very far away, but because the Council wanted to train the children responsibly, the entire Jedi Council would leave with Master Yoda, Kandali, and Anakin. Yoda would place Master Dooku in charge of the Order until the Council returned. It was very uncommon for the entire Jedi Council to leave the Order alone, but it made sense for them to go and do it twice in 3 years. Kandali and Anakin were very important to the Jedi, and they were going to be treated accordingly. Yoda had a very special place where he would teach these children. It was an ancient birthplace of the Jedi Order. Yoda believed that if he could cement the teachings of the Force for these twins, he needed to do it where the Force was full of balance and the birthplace of the Jedi Order. The birthplace where harmony and balance were brought together by the ancient Jedi and the Jedi Order was founded. The trip to Ahch-To was long, but once the journey was over, the Council was very excited for this opportunity. 3 years of preparation to teach these twins. Yoda would begin this teaching session and every lesson with a meditation. The children were just 3 years old, and Kandali and Anakin barely knew what was going on. But this was why Yoda was teaching them. This was to establish their lessons, and it was the establishing lessons for any Jedi to partake in. Every Jedi in the Order needed to learn them, and while most Jedi didn't learn this until they were 4 or 5, the Council believed that Kandali and Anakin were ready for this test. And ready they were. The children accelerated, having so much positive influence around them. Both Kandali and Anakin shined brightly as their training continued on Ahch-To. It was very rudimentary. Another one of the Jedi Master's presence would bring Kandali and Anakin back to Ahch-To to finish their training and help them fully see balance. But that day was a long ways away. The twins would also have a lot of fun on Ahch-To as well. Yoda knew how young they were, and he didn't want to take away from their progression as children. He wanted them to enjoy their life while also training hard. This would prove to be a brilliant approach to training the Skywalker twins. They would comprehend all the information they were given, and then they would be able to express their knowledge through their effort and their ability to perform. While it was very little and relatively rudimentary, these children were at the very least 3 years ahead of anyone else inside of the Jedi Temple. After 1 full year in Ahch-To, the children would be taken to Jabim by Jedi Master Adi Gallia. The Jedi Master would show the Skywalker children how to use the Force to build objects and move beings and inanimate objects. They would start really basic, but Gallia acted very maternally to the children. While a Jedi Master from the Council would show up here or there, it would usually be on short stays. The children knew all the Council members really well, and were always excited for the newest adventure. To Gallia, she began to realize the bond between Kandali and Anakin, and how significant it was to their development. She made a note of it to the other Council members that they planned to build off of it, and off of the children's bond with one another. Gallia would help the children perfect their usage of simple Force techniques on Jabim. It was extremely important to her that the children grow in their usage of the Force, and it was very obvious that they were growing well within the Force. Kandali and Anakin were able to levitate objects larger than most knights could do. It obviously wasn't done in a day, but the two 5-year-olds realized the importance of hard work and dedication. Gallia showed them a boulder on the first day that they would need to lift once they finished their training. That was on day 1. By the end of their training, they were moving boulders double the size with no effort. This brought Gallia a lot of happiness, because she helped the twins achieve this marvel. When Gallia brought the twins back to Coruscant, they would leave for Soraya with Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi. While the children interacted with him on Ahch-To, it had been since Ahch-To since their last interaction with him. Ki-Adi-Mundi brought the children to his homeworld, where he would teach the children about the emotional aspect of the Jedi Order, and how Jedi weren't meant to have attachments. While this didn't bother Kandali and Anakin, they took note of it. Not just with each other, their focus was on one another, and using their bond as brother and sister to make each other better. Their power as a duo is incredible. At the age of 6, Kandali and Anakin made even the likes of Ki-Adi-Mundi proud. There was one thing in the Force that Ki-Adi-Mundi would teach Kandali and Anakin, and that was using the powerful telekinetic ability he was known for using, and that was creating craters in the ground with the Force. The children rather enjoyed doing this, and they would even play pranks on one another by caving in the ground under each other. Ki-Adi-Mundi was the strictest of the 3 teachers they had thus far into their training. While it was simply Ki-Adi-Mundi being himself, it made the children worry that the next teacher could be harsher, and that the trend would continue. After a year with Ki-Adi-Mundi, the twins understood the concept of no attachments, other than the most important one to teach of them, and that was their connection to each other as siblings. And they also knew how to pull awesome pranks on other Jedi and each other. The next Jedi Master they had was an older Jedi Master. Though much like Yoda, he was a little bit shorter than they were at 7 years old. Jedi Master Piell would take the children to Jedha. He believed that the children, at the rightful age of 7, should learn courage and how to obtain the heart of a Jedi. Their mission was to keep the people of the city safe from smugglers, pirates, and while neither youngling had their Jedi weapons, they were tasked with using the Force. This would be effective until they put a massive crater in the middle of the city street. No one was hurt, but it certainly didn't make the people of Jedha City happy. Luckily for Piell, he found a group of people that he would have the children assist in his training endeavors with the children. This group called the Guardian of Wills. They were a group of Force enthusiasts that protect the Wills. They were very loyal to the Jedi way and the Jedi Code. It would be an eye-opening experience for the twins as they began understanding the concept of when to use aggressive Force and when to not. Even taught the twins that it was very important for a Jedi to know when and where to use their powers. While he didn't reprimand the 2 younglings, he did make sure they paid their dues to Jedha City by doing volunteer work with the poor people. This would continue to aid the twins in understanding what it meant to be a Jedi. Piell taught the children well, and their experience inside of Jedha City would embolden them and enlighten them. Kandali and Anakin would become much better because of their experience with Master Piell. He made sure they enjoyed their time too. While he was known to many as a brute, he had to even admit to himself that he enjoyed training the children of Jedha on Jedha. It was unexpected fun for them to enjoy. When the kids returned to Coruscant with Jedi Master Piell, they were immediately picked up by Jedi Master Oppo Rancisis. Kandali and Anakin were always a bit creeped out by him because he looked like a skinny hut. He was very kind, but the way he moved around was always a bit icky for a lack of a better expression. After all, Kandali and Anakin were just kids, and they could pick and choose anything to wear them out one day and be completely normal to them the next. It would be this exact same case that would lead them to grow especially fond of Jedi Master Rancisis and the journey that they would take to Tython. There was an old abandoned Jedi temple on Tython. While Kandali and Anakin never really traveled to the old ruins on Jedha, Oppo, on the other hand, would make the children live inside the Jedi ruins. It would be here where Oppo would teach the children in hand-to-hand combat. Oppo was extremely talented with using any limb on his body as an extension of his own power. Oppo could use his body for hand-to-hand combat, and while he wasn't built like a normal human being, he would still help the twins understand what they could truly achieve if they practiced what he preached. The children would do exactly what he said, and then they would obey everything he taught them. Oppo was extremely fond of teaching these children because they were great joy to teach, until one day they made a crater under him, and then ran into the forest. Oppo laughed it off, but then he tormented them for weeks with history lessons, and Jocasta knew. The lesson here was that what goes around comes around, and because Oppo knew they didn't really care for the traditional lessons, he got them back with traditional history lessons of the Jedi and everything that happened here on Tython. The children were such a joy, though, to have around, as they approached the age of 9. Oppo was all ready to pass them up onto the next Jedi Master, because once they got back to Coruscant, they'd be paired up with Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas. He was the most excited to train the students, and he was right in the middle of all the teachers. He would be one of the middle inspirations for Gallia and Anakin, though Sifo-Dyas would do something different. He would take the children into the lower levels of Coruscant to begin their training. There was also another thing to address. Because the Jedi focused so much on training Anakin and Gallia, they began to fall out of close touch with the Senate. It made the Jedi less political, and it earned Dooku's appraisal. While the Council didn't need Dooku's appraisal, they certainly understood where he came from. Regardless, the twins would learn from Sifo-Dyas. While Gallia and Anakin were both 9 at this point, their field of view began to increase rapidly. Both of them realized that they had so much more they could achieve if they just kept at it. A friendly rivalry between the two of them would begin as they challenged each other to grow more powerfully before the other. Gallia and Anakin would also be challenged by a special ability that their current master had. Sifo-Dyas was very skilled at foreseeing the future. Sifo-Dyas would teach the skill to Anakin and Gallia. While normally someone had to be born with the ability to obtain special powers, such as being able to see the future, these twins could learn anything, only if they practiced it and made it perfect. The Council understood that while Gallia and Anakin were very talented, they needed to practice in order to use their talent best, because the Council knew that talent was no good without putting in the hours to make it work. In the lower levels, Sifo-Dyas would teach the children about dealing with criminals, though these criminals on Coruscant were much more experienced, profitable, and dangerous than the ones on Jedha City. Sifo-Dyas also taught the children one more important tool, being able to decipher the true darkness of one's intentions. Though this tool would be useful of a lesson later in life, Sifo-Dyas didn't realize how well the children would be able to use it at some point. It wouldn't be a long trip back to the Jedi Temple after spending a full year in the Undercity of Coruscant. When the children reached the top side, they would be taken by Jedi Master Depa Billaba. She would teach the children, and she would take them to Ilum, and allow them to construct their first lightsabers. While the children probably could have gotten away with earning their first lightsabers when they were 8, it would have been more beneficial for them to finish their conception of the Force, the galaxy, and their life lessons before they began to wield what everyone in the galaxy wanted to get their hands on, a laser sword. Depa would be really excited to take the children to Ilum. She was very prideful of them, and she rejoiced in their accomplishments. Depa wasn't just very talented, but she was one of the Order's best, trained by Master Windu himself. Depa would show the children not just how to use a lightsaber, but she would show them telekinesis as well. While Depa used the same form of lightsaber combat as her master, she would skip Form 1 and train the twins Form 7. She would also form and allow her master to take what she taught them and progress it into Vapad, Windu's variant form of Form 7. Depa would keep the children on Ilum. The frozen world would be a great place for the twins to learn how to keep themselves alive. They were 10 at this point, and it was still very important to her that she continue showing the children how to survive against the odds. As much as Depa trained them how to use a Force and a lightsaber, she also made a full year training focus around survival. She would be the first master to take the children off-world of the world that they were originally supposed to be on. She would go to Ilum, Felucia, Kashyyyk, and Kessel, and this would all be worlds of which the children would visit and learn how to survive on. When the three returned to Coruscant, they would be approached by 2 Jedi Masters. This was going to be the first long-term joint session. While it wasn't uncommon for other Jedi Masters to join the children during their year with a Jedi Master, this would be the first time 2 Masters would accompany Gallia and Anakin on their training. Saesee Tiin and Eeth Koth would take the twins to the planet of Alderaan. While Alderaan was probably the most lush and beautiful planet in the Republic, the twins would work extremely hard here. They would be everywhere, and it would be here where Kendali and Anakin learned how to become incredible pilots. Saesee Tiin was one of the best pilots in the Order, other than Plo Koon, and he would teach the children how to fly a Jedi starship. Eeth Koth, on the other hand, would teach the children mental discipline. He was a skilled duelist, but true discipline in the heart required determination and maturity. This was not something he could just teach the children. Kendali and Anakin were now 11, and they were ready for this difficult lesson. With Saesee Tiin and Eeth Koth, Kendali and Anakin would train harder than they ever trained with another Jedi Master. It was incredible being around this level of talent. Their skill shot through the roof, and on Alderaan, Kendali and Anakin would find their identity as Jedi. While Anakin enjoyed flying and even excelled at it, Kendali would find herself in fortitude in mental discipline. She would also be perfectly content using her mind to keep herself and those around her, like her couple of seconds younger brother, safe. Eeth Koth saw the children at this point begin to make their own identity for themselves, and with such an identity they would begin to thrive with their own path laid before them. Kendali and Anakin would be taken off of Alderaan by Yarael Poof. The taller Jedi Master wouldn't take the children too far. He would take them to Tatooine. There was a former Jedi temple there, but they weren't there for that. Master Poof wanted the children to learn the ways of the Force, and the special abilities he had to offer them. Master Poof was also a very gifted illusionist. He could manipulate the Force to project images that he wanted to, into the minds of others. He would use this gift to frighten or even manipulate others, though if he wanted to, he could create a doppelganger to himself, or even go invisible. This was not an easy ability to master, but with time alone on Tatooine, the children would put their lightsabers away for the time being, and they would focus on what it was with the Force that they could do with it. They realized that if they could use this ability, they could become even more terrifying of a threat. Master Poof would train the children with a lightsaber for the first time from time to time, but he wanted the children to focus on this ability that he had specifically to him. It would be very useful if they mastered it, and it could too, at some point, save the galaxy from an unknown threat. Though Master Poof didn't know if that would ever be the case, he would spend the entire year teaching the children how to use this ability. As 12-year-olds, Kendali and Anakin would find this ability as very useful as their development into Jedi, also for Pregs as well. When Anakin and Kendali turned 13, they would be brought back to where it all began. No, not where they were born, but where their first lessons were commenced. Yaddle would take the twins back to the basics of their training. They would go to Ahch-To, and this time they'd be trained by Master Yaddle to use balance inside of the Force to elevate them. While Yaddle was a bright and even moderate Jedi when it came to the Jedi Code, she wanted to make sure that Kendali and Anakin used the full range of the Force itself. They were mentally and emotionally ready to handle this endeavor. Yaddle would allow for the twins to voyage across the island where the Jedi were founded, and from there the children would be allowed to find their comfort, though Kendali would go straight to the dark side. She was curious, and she found out how cruel it could be when she realized that she never wanted that same anger, pain, and fear to fall upon anyone. She would stop her younger brother from entering the cave, though Master Yaddle would make sure that Kendali didn't do that. It was important for Anakin to experience it for himself, and understood why the Jedi stood against the dark side of the Force. Kendali and Anakin would try and find an understanding of why balance was more important than darkness or light. They would also understand why they should rid the galaxy of the Sith. They were dangerous, and that danger could pose a threat to every living being in the galaxy. Yaddle would also show the twins one ability that, if practiced, could even stop the most powerful Force user. Moritro was an ancient art that enabled its user to slow an opponent's bodily functions to the point of even death. While Yaddle never used this ability for killing anybody, she saw that for Kendali and Anakin it would be a great use for them, if they used it responsibly. There was also a reason she let them experience the dark side before teaching this to them. Yaddle would take the two of them back to Coruscant, where they would be taught by Master of the Order himself. Mace Windu would take the Jedi to Yavin 4. While Mace wasn't the final test for the Jedi twins, he was going to prepare them. The last few years, Kendali and Anakin focused more on the Force itself, rather than lightsaber combat, and now Windu was going to reintroduce them to Fapad. This time, he would teach them how to master it, with Kendali and Anakin both finding their identities, more or less on Ahch-To and over the last couple years on Alderaan. It was Mace's job to make sure that As 14-year-olds, they cemented themselves to the way of the Force and allowed it to lead them where they needed to go and where they were meant to go. Mace would train the children rigorously. They wouldn't break. They would work hard consistently. Part of Mace Windu's reasoning for taking these children in the Yavin 4 was to have them use their environment to their advantage. As a Jedi, it was always best to prepare yourself for your surroundings and use anything that you didn't know efficiently, which is exactly why Gallia and Anakin were blindfolded for the first few months while training on Yavin. They needed to trust the Force and that it would guide them when they were in combat, and let it guide them, they did. Gallia and Anakin saw growth from being blindfolded, but once the blindfolds were taken off, they would rise to an extraordinary level when they sparred with Master Windu. The Jedi would use their blades efficiently, as they all danced around the Masters of the Force, and even more than that, the duelists with perfection. Mace demanded excellence from them, and that is exactly what he got. When the 14-year-olds turned 15, the final Jedi Master would arrive on Yavin 4. He would complete their training, and just as the Council had planned, they would become Jedi Knights as the youngest age of a Jedi Knight ever. Plo Koon was the final teacher, and he would test them all on their skills. Plo Koon was not Master Yoda, nor was he Mace Windu, which was exactly why he was the last teacher. The only Jedi Master to beat Master Yoda in lightsaber combat, he would finish Gallia and Anakin's training. He would spar with them, use the Force against them, and test each of their wills. He would separate the twins and test them as individuals. Plo Koon would take the teens to every planet that they had visited before, with the other Masters. Plo wouldn't allow them to know where they were going. He would land on the planet and immediately throw them into combat with each other. Plo Koon would then use a Force ability that the twins had never seen before, and he would teach it to them. Plo Koon would use Force Judgment lightly on Gallia and Anakin during sparring matches, but it didn't mean that the twins wouldn't play hard too. They used Master Poof's ability to duplicate themselves and make themselves go invisible. Plo loved it. They were challenging, young, and exciting. They challenged Plo every opportunity they got, but Plo wouldn't go silently. On each planet, he used his surroundings to his advantage. The twins had to work hard together, and individually, as best they could, to keep up with the Jedi Master. But all of their skills learned over the last 11 years were being put to the test. Gallia and Anakin would excel rapidly. The twins would grow more than ever before, and their harmony and balance within themselves allowed them to challenge Master Plo in ways not even he expected them to. Whether it was using the Force against each other to throw rocks, boulders, crumble structures, or if it was using their lightsabers elegantly like true swordsmen, Gallia and Anakin thought highly of Plo, and he did so even more of them. They were the best students he'd ever trained by a long shot, and he didn't even relent on his training of them. There was no easy day for Gallia or Anakin when they were with Plo Koon. The only time they got a break was when they were sleeping, eating, or on their way from one planet to the other. Plo taught the children how to feed off of the living Force, and truly manipulate the Force as an ally. When all was said and done, at the end of their training, Plo Koon would have each of the Jedi Masters that started their training with the children on Ahch-To join himself, Gallia, and Anakin on Ahch-To, where they would finish the training of the two children. Every single Jedi Master would spar and test the twins to the best of their ability. After a full year of being with Master Plo, the children had accelerated to a level none of the former teachers had seen before. The twins were incredible. Their usage of the lightsaber was almost unstoppable. Their charisma was intangible. Their knowledge and courage admirable. The Skywalker twins were the pride of the Jedi Order, especially because they were the pride of the Jedi Council themselves. When the twins turned 16 at the end of their year with Plo Koon, they were the first Jedi Knights on Ahch-To in more than a millennia. The Jedi Council was so proud of their students that they didn't know how to express it. Gallia and Anakin were extremely grateful as they celebrated each other, staying true to the siblings that they were. The Council all applauded the pride of the Jedi, as they held a massive celebration for Gallia and Anakin on Ahch-To, before returning to Coruscant to do the same there. Though there was one issue for Gallia and Anakin. They didn't like anyone other than the Council members. It wasn't their fault, but the twins never spent time inside of the temple. For the last 12 years, Gallia and Anakin were anywhere but the Jedi Temple, and while their peers were certainly Jedi, and believed in the same code that Gallia and Anakin believed in, they were far inferior. The Council accidentally babied Gallia and Anakin too much, and created a superiority complex inside of the twins. Though this complexity would go unnoticed for several months, until Master Tera Sinube noted to Master Yoda that Gallia and Anakin weren't fond of training with the other Jedi. Yoda would address the council about this. All the council members understood what it was. It wasn't that Kendali and Anakin thought they were better, it just happened to be the fact that they got specifically used to being around the best, and the best inside the Jedi Order. The twins needed to learn how to come down to a level and play with those below them. When the council brought Kendali and Anakin to them in the council chambers, they both expressed fear of hurting their peers. This came to a surprise. It wasn't arrogance, superiority, nor was it their environment. Kendali and Anakin were taught correctly, and all the tension they had with the other members of the Order wasn't from feeling superior to them, or the other members feeling inferior. It was the fact that Kendali and Anakin didn't want to accidentally hurt their peers. The council would instruct the twins that it was okay to train with others, and to always remember that they could teach others too. They could embolden others the same way they uplifted one another. Kendali understood it now. The council had to remember that while Kendali and Anakin were advanced beyond their years, and even mature to that same extent, they were still both teenagers. They had a lot to learn before they were fully developed adults, and they wouldn't be fully developed adults in the mind for at least the next 9 years. And that was completely okay. The council reassured the twins that they could help people inside the Order, even suggesting they consider taking on apprentices. Across the city of Coruscant, Maul Plagueis worked tirelessly to achieve victory. Over the course of the last 16 years, the Sith hadn't achieved much of anything. Their plans had changed, with Palpatine being taken out of the picture especially. Palpatine was a crucial part of the plan for Plagueis. Palpatine was meant to become a politician and work his way up to Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, though since his death, the Sith had to change their plans. Maul was no politician, so Plagueis decided he would use Maul to help him do what he and Palpatine had done for more than a decade before. The two of them were able to create life. The only issue is that Maul was not quite experienced enough as a Force user to do what Palpatine could do. It was a hard task, and while Plagueis tried his best to teach Maul, he was becoming impatient. Maul was no Sidious, and both of them knew that. For Maul, he assumed that his time was running out, and that he was going to be executed by Plagueis. Though Plagueis couldn't do that, there was no one else in the galaxy other than Maul that would be ready in case the Jedi released the terrible twins from their cage. Plagueis in the entire time assumed that the twins were inside the Jedi Temple. There was also one other thing. Plagueis didn't sign up or join the Trade Federation. They still had their little issue on Naboo, but that didn't last that long. It was dealt with, well, by Qui-Gon and Dooku. But other than that, there was no issues with the Republic or anything else. Anyways, thanks to Jakaas Nu, the Jedi Council hid the twins' essence, so the Sith thought they were always inside the Jedi Temple. Kendali and Anakin at this point were working independently, finally going off alone, or with each other on their missions. Though Kendali and Anakin never went anywhere without the other, so all their missions were done together. The twins were being sent down to the lower levels to find and rescue Jedi Master Quinlan Vos. The Jedi Master had been captured by some spice dealers. It was set up that they were luring him in, and the Council last had contact with him on level 1313. It wasn't a terrible level, but every so often, some bad lowlifes would sneak up to level 1313 to mess with the Jedi or the police system. Kendali and Anakin were out and about, moving on behalf of the Council. The orders came in from Master Sifo-Dyas himself: save Quinlan and return to the Order. There was no reason to risk danger if it was unnecessary. Kendali and Anakin were really good about following orders. Quinlan, on the other hand, was not. As the twins descended into the lower levels of Coruscant, they watched as the light got darker and darker, and the eeriness built up. It wasn't uncommon, they had been here before, but the feeling on the Force was peculiar. It was like something they had never felt before. The twins thought it best to keep on high alert. It seemed as if there was something triggering this evilness in the lower levels. The twins had a small tracking device that led them to Quinlan's last location. It was outside of a shop. It was very clearly a cover business, a corner store disguised as a corner store to sell spice or whatnot. Though oddly enough, this weird encounter in the Force they felt seemed to be emanating from here. Anakin and Kendali got close to one another as they both peered through the windows. Anakin asked his sister to give him a boost, as she lifted Anakin up and he jumped to the top of the building. Kendali, on the other hand, wrapped her black robes around her body as she stepped into the store. She had her head covered with a dark robe. She peered around as she looked like she was trying to buy something. A husky man walked out and asked her what she wanted. Kendali turned around and gently waved her hand below her robes as she said she wanted to know where the Jedi was. The man repeated the saying to her. Kandali then rolled her eyes. She forgot that she needed to say it with direction, not a question. She waved her hand again and told the man to take her to the Jedi. The man repeated it back to her as he turned around and walked into the back. Kandali giggled to herself for messing it up as she rounded the corner and the counter and walked into the back room. As she looked in the back, she saw 3 men all turn and look at her. One was tied up, while the man with a tall head had his hand next to the man tied up's head. Kandali didn't know what Quinlan looked like, but this must have been him. There was also another bulky man in the room, though he had horns of some sort. Kandali looked and then noticed that the 2 men had lightsabers on their hilts. The taller man asked who she was, and as he turned his attention to her, Maul stepped forward, telling his master he'd handle this. Kandali smiled under her robes as she told the horned man to handle her then. Maul stepped forward as she used the Force to throw the Zabrak out of the room. Kandali looked at the taller man, after saying, "Whoopsie." Plagueis ignited his blade as Kandali realized she was facing down a Sith. Quinlan told Kandali to watch out as she began to use the Force the same way Master Poof taught her and Anakin. She became multiple people at once. Plagueis, as he swung around rapidly and confusedly, tried to hit her. He was furious, confused, and upset. Kandali slipped under his blade as she ignited her own and clashed with the Sith Lord. Anakin heard the sound of lightsabers as he jumped down to see Maul running towards his sister. Anakin reached his hand out as he sent electric judgment into Maul, throwing him from his feet. Anakin ignited his lightsaber as he and his sister stood side by side, as they collided blades against the Dark Lord of the Sith. The twins moved in unison. As Plagueis fell back, he couldn't keep up. They were too quick and too strong. Anakin rolled around as he stopped Plagueis in his tracks. The Sith Lord cried out, demanding to be let go. Anakin then focused his energy on Plagueis, as he felt every cell inside of his body stop moving. His heart then stopped, and his body stood perfectly still, in the air, just where Anakin held him. Kandali, on the other hand, swung her blade around, cutting through Plagueis as she collided blades with Maul, before cutting him down with a 3-point saber combo. Anakin moved over and freed Quinlan from his restraints. Quinlan was wildly impressed. He finally understood why the Council kept these twins hidden for so long. They were literally incredible. Their power was effortless, and their maneuverability was limitless. Quinlan congratulated them. The twins didn't understand, but Quinlan explained that they had just wiped out the Sith. Kandali and Anakin were shocked by this as they looked at Quinlan with confused expressions. Quinlan snickered. He told them that the Sith had captured him. The tall dude was talking about using Quinlan for some sort of blah 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 science experiment. Quinlan didn't really care. He told the twins that the villain was monologue, and he just kinda tuned him out. Kandali and Anakin smiled as they watched as Quinlan pushed them out of the room, suggesting to get them all a drink. Anakin told Quinlan that they were 16, and so Quinlan snarkily told them that the drinks were on him. After drink time with Uncle Voss, the 3 would return to the Order, and the 3 would address the Council. They would show the lightsabers of the Sith, and the lightsabers would be kept in the archives, alongside the blades of several more Sith, and that of Sidious, which was the last one collected. It seemed as if the twins brought balance to the Force, but their mission to the galaxy was not done yet. While it would be a couple more years until Kandali and Anakin would find out about this mission, the 2 would adopt their own students. Their students would grow exceptionally well, and with natural death of Yarael Poof and Sifo-Dyas leaving his council seat, both Kandali and Anakin would be offered a spot on the High Council after their Padawans reached knighthood. They would take this with great honor, though for the time being they would continue to help people. News would start to make its way through the galaxy that an evil force was ripping through systems near the unknown regions. It was laying waste to entire planets and ravaging civilizations for fun. The Jedi had to do something about it, and while they didn't often work for or with the Republic, they had to make an exception here. The death count would shoot to billions each day. This force was one to be reckoned with. A report from the Republic said that they couldn't be defeated with blasters or regular technology present within the Republic. This would obviously leave a great challenge for the Jedi to deal with, but Kandali and Anakin had a plan for dealing with whichever group would ravage through innocent planets. Kandali and Anakin told the Council that it was time for the students to become the Masters. It was an ability that required absolute patience, neutrality, and balance of oneself. The twins taught their masters that they needed to be fully ready to sacrifice everything for this mission. If this enemy was this brutal and powerful, they needed to be ready to sacrifice themselves to save the galaxy. Though the Jedi were selfless, of course they were ready to do this, but the entire Council was ready to use absolute patience, neutrality, and balance of oneself. That was undecided. The Chancellor of the Republic reported this enemy to be moving towards the system of Ryloth. With a target to save, the Council would move out immediately. Each using a Jedi starfighter of their own, they would all jump to hyperspace. The fleet was evil. It was very powerful, and after claiming billions of lives across several star systems, the Yuuzhan Vong was going to rain down death and destruction on everything the galaxy had ever worked to achieve. The Jedi in hyperspace focused heavily on the Force. Kandali protected all of her friends as she used a battle meditation to prepare all of them for what they were about to face. Anakin at the same time prepared to use the late Yarael Poof's Force ability to duplicate the Jedi fleet. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it would suffice. The Jedi could do this. They just needed to be quick about it and save the Twi'leks on Ryloth. Within hours, the Jedi would come out of hyperspace to see an insane fleet push towards Ryloth. The Jedi had gotten here in perfect time. Kandali and Anakin told the Council they needed to be ready, but the truth is that the Council wasn't really sure what the Skywalker twins were trying to get them to do. That was the point, though. Kandali and Anakin didn't want the Council to overthink this. They could all do it, but they just needed to trust that they could. In simple terms, patiently trust themselves to find neutrality, and with balance, they would be able to do it. As the Jedi came out, Anakin used the Force to duplicate the Jedi fleet and send a fake fleet towards the Vong. They fell for it, but they wouldn't fall for it for long as they began to open fire on the fake Jedi fleet. Kandali and Anakin told the Council members to reach out with them, use everything they were told to use. Kandali and Anakin did the same as they caught the Yuuzhan Vong in the middle of a trap. Anakin told the Council members to focus as he used the Force, and the Force of every Council member was pushed outwards. Both Kandali and Anakin took the power and combined it with their own, as the twins created 13 black holes around the Yuuzhan Vong fleet. The power it took to produce this was legendary. The Jedi all watched as they felt their Force essence create the most powerful storm of the Force they had ever seen, maybe ever seen in the history of the galaxy. The Vong fleet began to shred apart as the Jedi watched with wide-open eyes and mouths at the bottom of their cockpits. The Vong fleet shattered into millions of pieces as a legendary fleet from the unknown regions was sent into oblivion. The Jedi looked around at each other, but they all took deep breaths. It took a lot of energy to do what they had just done, but it wasn't a success yet. It was a victory, but they had just saved the galaxy from an unstoppable force. Kandali and Anakin then used the remaining power they had to drain the black holes and close them up, leaving the space above Ryloth safe again. This would be an absolute victory. While the Jedi would have to go to every planet ravaged by the Vong, they would do so with charity and compassion. The Skywalker twins would lead the Jedi into a golden era, of which they would be able to sustain peace in the galaxy. With the Yuuzhan Vong and the Sith gone, Kandali and Anakin would teach a new generation of Jedi, alongside of the aging Council members. Kandali and Anakin's love for the galaxy would continue to bolster out new resolve, peace, and justice. The Jedi would praise their work and of their pride and joy, and they would celebrate the gift that the Skywalker twins bestowed to the galaxy, as it would find itself in peace for the rest of time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to George Story, Benjamin Wells, Jay Hoffman, Warpigman, Thoroughlight, AC Raptor, Gort, and Chancellor Story for the channel. Let's hit 2,000 likes on this so we can see. I don't know what's next. The thumbnail will probably be up because I haven't decided what I'm going to do next. And if you want to see another what if, let me know down below. I read our comments about doing crossovers. Check out the Twitch community, Discord, and Patreon if you want to support me in other ways. And about our giveaway, go down below. There's a doc link pinned to the video. You click on the link, you go down below, you write your name on the doc. You do not respond to people telling you that you want something in the comments. That's not me. Again, I don't do giveaways in the comment section. Every giveaway is done in a video. So we haven't hit 50,000 subscribers yet, so wait for that. Anyways, let's talk about our story here. I'm not sure how to feel about this yet. I'm gonna be honest, I wrote this and then I just recorded it. So I'm still kind of comprehending what I just did. This is very interesting. Kandali and Anakin are certainly a powerhouse, and I believe that two twins of Skywalker would be a powerhouse. And I mean, this story could have easily been 3 hours. I mean, it really could have been 3 hours. Focusing on all the council members and how they taught the children, I think that could have taken 3 hours. I mean, it could have been a long movie. But I think what we have right here is fair enough to kind of go over what is the main the main kind of idea that we got going here, right? The fact that these twins were trained by every council member, and because they were trained by every council member, they were allowed to succeed in an incredible way. I think having every council member work together to train these children would be incredible. I think their resolve would just be immaculate, honestly. I think that if Skywalker had a twin sister, I mean, they would have been incredible. I like the name Kendali. If you guys like it, let me know down below. I usually try and go with unique Star Wars names when I do names for these, like Matabre, Zena, and of course now we have Kendali. So, but yeah, I mean, I wanted to. I'll talk about the beginning of the story because that's really the most where I can think about the big change happening and the probably biggest kind of moment for you guys. And the reason I did the change in the beginning is because look, I get this comment a lot. Why do you keep killing Palpatine off? He's the only villain ever. He's the only villain. Like, seriously, there's 9 movies and he's the only villain ever. So I kind of like have to kill him off if I'm gonna kill a villain. And when I get the chance to, I want to get him out of the way because I want a new villain. I want someone new to play with. He's the same guy in 9 movies. I could do a video on the prequels, the original trilogy, or the sequels, and it's the same bad guy. So it's kind of annoying and kind of hard to try and write a story when you got the same bad guy for 9 films and countless numbers of shows and everything in between. So I always want to try and get him out of the way so I can put somebody new in, introduce something new to the story, because it gets boring writing about Palpatine, and I'm sure it gets boring listening about the same dude unless he's winning or doing something different than just dying. So the beginning of this was me to originally set it up. Originally Plagueis was going to go there, but then I was like, wait, what if I made Plagueis the bad guy for this series or this video? And I thought Plagueis would be a better bad guy. As for the development of the Sith, I don't believe that Maul is anything near as powerful as Sidious is in the Force. They're just 2 different beings. They're just 2 completely different beings. I think Plagueis wouldn't have been able to utilize Maul the same way he could have with Palpatine. Not just from the way that Maul carries himself, but the fact that Maul isn't a politician, the fact that Maul isn't nearly as powerful. I think the Sith would have severely lacked if Sidious was killed. And remember, Sidious would have been, you know, he'd probably been in his early 40s or late 40s, probably early 50s, so he would have been kind of young, but he would have also been fighting Dooku, who is an incredible duelist, and Windu, who is also an incredible duelist. You know, Windu already beat him, and Palpatine was already afraid of Dooku in canon because he's an incredible duelist. So that kind of tells you my thought process behind that. I liked keeping Sifo-Dyas alive. I really wanted to change this. I didn't want to do a whole Clone Wars plotline. Again, I'm trying to keep this storytelling experience not just unique for you guys, but unique for me, because I want to enjoy writing these stories as much as you guys want to enjoy listening to them, and I always want to give a unique experience. Whether you like it or not, I always try and get something new so that it's something that you haven't heard before, and it's hard. It's hard. I think we're approaching 100 videos on the channel, woohoo, but you know, it happens. You know, you're gonna have crossovers and stuff that's very similar to something you heard before, and I wanted to stay away from that, so I avoided the Clone Wars plot in the story and kind of just focused on Kendali and Anakin. And that's kind of what I wanted the story to focus on. Sometimes I don't get the focus on some characters because certain stories revolve around these characters. For example, in the last story, the one that came before the Savage and Maul one, they were the main characters. I was focusing on them because they were the main characters. They were essentially the protagonists, right? Anakin and Kendali are the protagonists in this video, and that's why I focus on them for so much time, other than the talk about our antagonists here or there. Anyways, though, I really hope you enjoyed this. I put a lot of work into this today, so I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all. Spread the love. Let's hit 50,000 subscribers so we can give away those 3 lightsabers in a video, not in the comment section. I don't give free massages. I swear, if you don't learn how to spell messages, help yourself. I don't know. Anyways, I love you all. Spread the love, and I'll see you guys in the next video. May the Force be with you.